Just to set the stage here, Donald Trump has been taking swipes at Ron DeSantis for months now on Truth Social. But this past week, Trump took to Truth Social and promoted a post suggesting that Ron DeSantis has groomed high school girls. It said, quote, "Here is Ron DeSanctimonious grooming high school girls with alcohol as a teacher," to which Trump wrote, "No way, that's not Ron, is it?" Another image had the caption, "Ron DeSantis was having a drink party with his students when he was a high school teacher. Having drinks with underage girls and cuddling with them certainly looks pretty gross and ephebophilia-esque." To which Trump wrote, "No way?" Now, the image of DeSantis was first shared on a site called Hill Reporter, showing DeSantis with several female students from Darlington School in 2002, when DeSantis taught there for a year as a 23-year-old Yale graduate. According to interviews with former students in the New York Times, DeSantis was a frequent guest at parties with students, with one former student saying, quote, "As an 18-year-old, I remember thinking, what are you doing here, dude?" And so after Trump effectively promoted claims of DeSantis being a pedophile, DeSantis finally responded saying this.
"I spend my time delivering results for the people of Florida and fighting against Joe Biden. That's how I spend my time." I don't spend my time trying to smear other Republicans.
Now, I'm not saying this to defend Trump because I think both Trump and Ron DeSantis are horrific, vile, depraved human beings. But if the best Ron DeSantis has is this wimpy little retort, then this dude is in for a rude awakening as we head toward November 2024. Donald Trump will go full scorched earth on whoever stands in his way to securing the Republican nomination. And if the best that DeSantis could do is to say, "Well, I don't spend my time trying to smear other Republicans," then Donald Trump will be frothing at the mouth to take him on. And again, I don't say this to applaud Trump. I say this because I have two eyes and basic enough sense to know that Trump has and will steamroll anyone who can't throw a punch. And far short of throwing a punch, DeSantis seems too weak to even get in the ring. And of course, there's this suggestion among the pundit class that Ron DeSantis just has to stay out of the mud where Trump wants him to be. And there may be some truth to that. I'm sure there are some Republicans out there who recognize the toxicity and baggage of Donald Trump. But a lot of Republicans are still squarely behind him. And they're not just going to abandon the guy because the pundit class has anointed Ron DeSantis the heir apparent in the Republican Party. If Ron DeSantis wants to beat Trump, he's going to have to throw a punch. And doing his best Jeb Bush impression probably isn't going to cut it. Remember too, Ron DeSantis literally began his political career as a Trump flunky. Here's a campaign ad that DeSantis put together during his first run for governor of Florida.
"Everyone knows my husband Ron DeSantis is endorsed by President Trump, but he's also an amazing dad. Ron loves playing with the kids.
Build the wall."
He reads stories.
Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired." I love that part.
He's teaching Madison to talk.
Make America great again.
People say Ron's all Trump, but he is so much more.
Big league. So good.
I just thought you should know.
Ron DeSantis for governor.
Yeah, I'm gonna, vomit. So again, all of this is to say that Trump's power within the Republican primary electorate shouldn't be overlooked. And of all people who should understand that, it's probably the guy who had to tap into that to get elected in the first place. But going back to Trump's attack, what's especially ironic about this is that DeSantis' press secretary, Christina Pushaw, who, by the way, blocked me on Twitter because Republicans are very committed to free speech, has spent plenty of time online calling everyone else groomers. And yet now, she'll be busy contending with accusations about her own boss being a groomer, spurred on by the very guy who her boss relied on to get elected. You gotta love the leopards eating faces party. No one ever thinks that the leopard will eat their face until, of course, it does, without fail, every single time. I should note too that while this latest attack by Trump was the most recent, it was by no means the only one. Trump has had his sights trained on DeSantis for months since it became clear that DeSantis represents his biggest threat in the Republican primary ahead of 2024. Here is just a sampling of the attacks that we've heard from Trump.
"We're winning big, big, big in the Republican Party for the nomination like nobody's ever seen before. Let's see, there it is, Trump at 71, Ron DeSanctimonious at 10%, Mike Pence at 7. Oh, Mike's doing better than I thought."
Mr. Trump posting that, quote, "Ron came to me in desperate shape before his 2018 Florida election, and that he saved DeSantis from being, quote, politically dead."
News Corp, which is Fox, the Wall Street Journal, and the no longer great New York Post, is all in for Governor Ron DeSanctimonious, an average Republican governor with great public relations who didn't have to close up his state but did unlike other Republican governors, whose overall numbers for a Republican were just average, middle of the pack, including COVID, and who has the advantage of sunshine, where people from badly run states up north would go no matter who the governor was, just like I did. Claims DeSantis' 2018 governor's race was being stolen based on voter fraud, and, quote, I sent in the FBI and U.S. attorneys and the ballot theft immediately ended. And now he says, quote, Ron DeSanctimonious is playing games.
I've taken it. I've had the booster. Many politicians, I watched a couple of politicians be interviewed, and one of the questions was, did you get the booster? Because they had the vaccine. And they're answering it like, in other words, the answer is yes, but they don't want to say it. Because they're gutless. You got to say it.
And look, just to be clear here, I'm not saying any of this to show any preference to Donald Trump over Ron DeSantis, just in case anyone is left on the internet who thinks I'm a Trump fan. This is all just to say that, in my opinion, a weak, feckless response by Ron DeSantis amid a barrage of attacks from Donald Trump doesn't seem to be a winning strategy on the right, especially considering the very recent history of the 2016 Republican primary. Quite literally, every other Republican tried that strategy of ignoring Trump's attacks, only to be completely consumed and destroyed by them. So we don't have to imagine what would happen because it already did. But the truth is that I don't have a dog in this fight. I think both of them are dangerous, terrible people. And I also think that one of them is going to be the Republican nominee. And so knowing that, my suggestion for who to vote for in the 2024 general is to find someone who doesn't traffic in racism and homophobia and transphobia. Someone who doesn't mock the poor, who doesn't pit Americans against each other based on their skin color, who doesn't fearmonger based on ethnicity or nationality, who doesn't rely on tired culture wars to scare an aging white base into thinking that their culture is going to be taken away unless a Republican is in office. DeSantis and Trump may be using different tactics right now, but they are two sides of the exact same coin. And regardless of who becomes the nominee, they're going to be equally as detrimental to the people of this country. So there's going to be plenty of horse race coverage, and I'll be guilty of it a little bit myself, but please remember to look at the bigger picture here. We already had several years of Republican control under Donald Trump. We watched our government descend into abject corruption and incompetence. We saw the world's worst response to the COVID pandemic thanks to a rejection of science. We saw jobs crater and unemployment skyrocket. We saw division worse than at any other point in this country's history. Compare that with the first 2 years of a Democratic administration. We saw a raft of popular legislation get signed into law, including legislation that'll benefit red states and Republicans, who will now have rural broadband, who will see factory jobs in renewables and chips, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act, who will benefit from lower healthcare costs and cheaper prescription drug prices, who will get care as veterans. We watched as American economy added 12.1 million jobs, including a booming 800,000 manufacturing jobs, and watched as the unemployment rate sank to 3.4%. That's a 54-year low. Republicans like Trump and DeSantis will work relentlessly to distract you with theatrics and culture wars, but the simple fact is that they're only doing it because they're desperate to distract you from the accomplishments of a party that has spent its short time in the majority delivering for the American people. They are horrified that people will start to realize that competence in government can actually have a material impact on people's lives, and that people will finally recognize Republicans for exactly what they bring to the table, which isn't much of anything. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can click the thumbnail right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work even further, the best way is to subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. There you can check out my interviews with major players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Jamie Raskin, and so many more. Plus other interviews that live exclusively on the podcast. That link is also right here on this screen, or just search No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen wherever you listen to podcasts.